We're live.
We are live. Senate Education Committee, afternoon of Friday, April 24th. We're going to go back to the miscellaneous Ed bill, page 931, and review of the new draft since yesterday, our new language since yesterday. With legislative council.
Good afternoon, Beth St. James, Office of Legislative Counsel. I have draft 3.1 for you all of a committee amendment to H 931 as passed by the House. Draft 3.1. And I've kept it formatted as instances because you're not making changes to the bulk of the language in 931. So the first instance of amendment, do you want me to share my screen or do you all have it in front of you?
I think we all have it.
Okay. Is striking out section 13 in its entirety and then replacing it with just the word deleted in brackets. And that was the class size minimums language.
Yep. With the intent of moving it to the nature bill.
I have not lost that language. Yeah, no. I mean, like, I know
The word is.
it's traveling in the universe. This language doesn't reflect that. And then the second instance of amendment is you're going to strike out the effective date section, which is the last section of the bill. And you're going to replace it with one new section, which is the Intercollegiate Sexual Harm Prevention Council language that you walked through yesterday with Wendy and Charlie. And then you're also going to add the effective date section back in after the new section. So, and I did make a couple changes and they have seen, Wendy and Charlie have seen this language. And I certainly don't want to speak on their behalf, but I don't think they have any concerns about what you have in front of you. And I'll point out the
Probably the same thing.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I'll point out the few places where I made some changes, and they appear to be okay with that. So we're on line 14, page 1, the Intercollegiate Sexual Harm Prevention Council. They are suggesting to the subsection A, the creation, to add that language regarding so there's created the Intercollegiate Sexual Harm Prevention Council to advance best practices for prevention of and response to campus sexual harm. And then the membership is changed to what they recommend. And so that's on page 2, the Title IX coordinator or designee from each post-secondary school chartered in Vermont with a physical campus located within Vermont. A peer educator or advocate appointed by, and the language that you all looked at yesterday had the committee or the council itself appointing the peer advocate, and that's not best practice to have the council appoint its own members. So I reached out to Wendy and Charlie, and they have recommended that it be the vice provost for student affairs of UVM who appoints the peer educator or advocate. The third,
Just to play that out a little bit. Would it? Well, the vice provost is, I was thinking, should be the president, who would that delegate to? But on the other hand, the vice provost is going to talk to the president. So think about everything.
it's a policy choice as to who it is.
Yeah.
But if you are okay with the vice provost, I don't think you can have anyone you want to make this point.
No, I understand.
Yeah, okay.
I was just raising it for the committee. Normally I'm good with that.
I can just roll back page 2, line 4. The term charter, post-secondary schools chartered in Vermont, does that include the private universities such as Middlebury?
Yes.
Yep. Thank you.
And then if we go down to line 14, the next change to the membership is the executive director of the Network Against Domestic Violence and Sexual Violence or designee. the next change is the program coordinator of the Vermont Forensic Nursing Program or designee. And then the last change is the Commissioner of Public Safety or designee.
Where is that happening? Who is the program director? Not necessarily the name of the person, the Vermont Forensic Nursing Program. Is that only at one place, the Forensic Nursing Program, or is that?
It is, I believe, my understanding is that the Vermont, and this is just literally from Googling, which is
Okay.
what my law degree has bought me. They appear to be a program that provides services to survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, etc.
Okay, the coordinator of Vermont. Okay, yes, you're right.
I think they
Yeah,
have
got it.
someone who's the head of them,
Okay,
if you will.
yeah, okay.
Okay. And then the Commissioner of Public Safety is the last member. And then all of the other members that exist in current law, all of that language is struck. So when you see this language in the green books next year, it's gonna be nice and cleaned up. It's just gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Commissioners, public safety. UVM.
No, the Commissioner of Public Safety for Vermont.
Oh, I thought she was a second.
This,
Should they just make the EPS
let me use that law degree to Google that.
because I know each university and college has a public safety section. Okay,
My understanding is that this is the state of Vermont Commissioner of Public Safety.
Yeah. Like the Department of Public Safety,
Yeah.
TPS.
So there would be a commissioner because they're a department, not an agency.
Oh,
No, but good pickup for thought, because I was.
because I thought it was
Yeah.
executive order and agency.
Well, someone from the administration can reach out, correct me.
Okay,
So,
so there was, we had a conversation yesterday where with Boston, we talked about this. Barvick.
Violence prevention director.
Yeah, it seems appropriate to be rolled into this group, but I understand you also had a comment that they can access anybody. But this is, again, program that we formed, funded, and it seems germane to this group as part of the core group as opposed to a peripheral. And I just wanted to remind everybody to at least have a conversation to see if it bubbles up to a formal membership. Well, didn't you have a bill a couple years ago? Was it like S-121? Somebody from UVM brought to us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
is this a spin-off from that?
I think it is related.
Yeah.
It's
Well, you're making different, so way back. You can say.
Hey, I'm an old guy. That's your stuff.
Still sharp.
Yesterday, yeah.
Yeah, but you have good practice.
Well, I think the only thing we can do is, I think Charlie is going to be here later, so you can check in with her, replace that issue again. But we could also, yes,
Are we done with this language?
well, not quite because we have, and the duties of the council. There's that. So we have that issue still in front of us, okay, duties the council shall.
I've tried my best to, the way that you were given the language was just kind of a strike all of the statute. And I wish it was that easy from a drafting convention standpoint. So I've gone in and I've gotten rid of any of the tasks that didn't match up with the new tasks or duties for the task force. So you'll see like subdivisions 1 and 2 and 3 are entirely repealed. And then I've gone in and edited the subdivisions that most closely matched the language that you saw yesterday. And so that would start with subdivision 4. That instead of identifying and sharing information, it's just sharing information about effective practices regarding sexual violence prevention and response, sexual health education, and strategies for mitigating sexual harm and secondary impacts of sexual harm on college campuses in Vermont. You can see the vast majority of that is current law. Same for subdivision 5. Instead of identifying campus-wide activities, their charge is now to share information about campus-wide activities. Subdivision 6 is repealed. And then subdivision 7 is amended to, instead of creating or promoting annual training, they are sharing information about annual training for college populations. And because they're not creating or promoting that training, that language about having those trainings open to certain folks didn't really make sense. The assistance to the council has been repealed. Their annual reporting requirement has been repealed. Subdivision, I'm on page 5, the meetings, subsection F. You know, there was really no legal reason. This is already the council already exists, but because you're doing an overhaul, right? To kind of remind everyone that there's going to be new folks at the table, I suggested updating that date for the first meeting to occur. And the date that Wendy and Charlie suggested was November 15th of 2026. The council is required to select co-chairs from among its members, one representing a public post-secondary school and one representing a private post-secondary school. Instead of meeting quarterly, the council will now meet twice per year, no per diems. Page 6. We're
Can
gonna,
I interrupt this for a second? So the report section on page 5, line 7, et cetera, has been removed. Is that they requested it be removed?
yes.
I hate to create an organization that doesn't have any feedback mechanism. But I know there's no per diem associated with it, but I sure would like to know if we're on a positive trend or negative trend in this regard, or.
Didn't they say they had a problem getting reformed?
Yeah, but that's the whole restructure of the membership. So
Isn't this though being set up just for them to be at the much less designed that is sort of the construct?
because they're just sharing.
Yeah,
Sure, they have them share with us though. Something, trend, something. Otherwise. But first off, we back up a step. We say that fully respect the fact that the group should exist. It should be fortified. But I sure would like to know if they're involved. I'm just wondering if this group could, at least provide advice to the education committees.
no, yeah, all they're doing is sharing information. Maybe we could, of course, we could invite them in any time. We could remind ourselves to do that by putting something in about,
Well, being there,
show report to them.
they should have, yeah. Or at least submit a report, you know, like,
Well, I think coming in like that. What we're really talking about is a checking on, I would say that, because it's kind of an odd thing to put in the statute. Do you have any thought about how to do that? Like,
Well,
why are you supposed to get them in?
I'm doing a thought experiment here. And so one question I have for you all is, when's the last time you read one of their reports? Yeah. Thank you.
well, but when has it ever been submitted to street?
So that's what my fancy law degree is helping me do right now, is using your website to look at reports submitted and see if I can find the most recent report that was submitted.
Oh, here's perfect time.
She is.
Yeah, here's what's been ringing.
So while Ben's looking, Charlie, you can assume for the record.
Uh,
or
I am Charlie Glisserman. I'm the policy director at the Vermont Network Against Domestic and Sexual Violence.
So
How can I be helpful?
We're having, there's two little discussions about the, latest language. The second of the two, that we're just talking about is whether there should be any kind of a report to the legislature. And we're recognizing that the purpose here really seems to be just to get you around the table to share information. And then, but then it was still something I'd like to know, if we should know. So your reaction to that?
Yes, I think your assessment that this is really a table for kind of information and resource sharing is accurate. We are certainly happy to stay in touch with the committee, and I mean, we will either way, on any recommendations for policy or administrative changes that come out of that body. Of course, it's a policy decision for you all, but I think that the evolving purpose of the council doesn't necessarily lend itself as best to a report to the legislature on progress. It's really meant as a discussion table.
And then we were discussing, having kind of reached that point in our thinking, we were discussing the possibility of just something to request a check-in with us.
Mhm.
And figure out, Beth is trying to figure out.
So I think you have a couple options. All of these are policy options. So I'll note that just searching on the legislature's website, using the search term intercollegiate, the only report I can find is from 2023 and November 2023. So that would have been for the 24 session. So I think I would throw back to you. Do you really need a report from these folks, right? Policy question. One thing that we do, it's not a come to the table check back, but one thing that we could do is we could put a sunset in a prospective repeal, which is what Ledge Council is trying to do for any kind of standalone council or committee. For example, the School Construction Advisory Board sunsets in 10 years. And it is a way to force the legislature to review what is going on and make sure that you want to keep that body alive and take proactive action to repeal that sunset. That is a very common tool that we use when we're creating standalone committees or councils or whatever the names are. You can have some session law in here that requires a report back in 4 years, 2 years, separate from a standing requirement in statute. But it's all a policy decision.
I'm thinking more like not forcing them to draft a report, but just meet with the committee.
So when we want to see a written report, we submit a written report. And so if you don't submit a written report, if you just say report to, then that can be through testimony.
Yeah, so let's think about where we want to do that. How often would it make sense to do that? Have you want to talk about your work?
Mhm.
2 years, every 1 year, getting it every biennium?
I think the beginning of every biennium is a nice opportunity for that kind of check-in.
Yes.
Do we have this mechanism for any other standing committee that we create that they come in and testify in this committee?
I don't know. I can certainly research that and get back to you. If you don't write written report, you get what you get, and that could be a body showing up and testifying to you. So I'm happy when I have time to audit Title 16 to see where those reports are and whether they've been written. But I don't know off the top of my head.
I mean, so this is the stance I take on a lot of the House bills we get in Senate Judiciary, which tend to have a lot of reports and studies that, in other conversations I'm told aren't actually needed and we can take them out, no problem. And so my point is, if we are curious about the work why don't we send an email and have them come in? I don't know if I'm oversimplifying it, but you know, we can. I also understand there's a whole lot that goes on, and it's easy to lose track of what's happening outside the building, the things that we create. So it certainly wouldn't hurt for us to just internally and administratively have just a running list of the things that we make, committees outside of here that we make, and you know, have a checklist of hearing from them however so often.
Yes.
What do we come and go every 2 years? We say the 2 years come back and report to us, it could be to a completely different committee.
Yeah.
And they're like saying, who are you? What are you doing? I mean, somehow it's always
Self-justification.
right. Yeah, so I guess the point is if it's important enough that we create session law or create an act, that we should be getting a report about it. Even though there's no money involved, there really is. Right?
Well, I think you would welcome the opportunity to come every couple of years and talk to us, right?
I would welcome that. And, you know, if that is, should be spelled out in policy language, that's a decision for you. We're also happy to stay in touch with this committee and either send or respond to one of those email requests for testimony.
I guess we also sometimes kind of bless and support groups meeting because they need to collaborate and they're dealing with very sensitive topics. I think this is a group that I have trusted in the past to come to a senator or come to a committee when they do feel a change is needed. I don't think we need to spell anything out. That would be my vote. I also don't even like to ask for reports because I think what happens is you have turnover and then other people don't read them because they didn't know we were even asking.
I think the one thing we don't want to do is handle it.
So then we can't really, we're writing down, like, come back and talk to, like, I don't think that's good practice and policy.
Okay, let's start. Let's go to the second issue. The second space.
Right, Bella did answer that.
One of that we thought might be.
Oh, Dee Barbick, you know her and her organization. She's been in and out of here.
I personally do not. I've only been at the Vermont Network for a little shy of 2 years. And so I certainly don't know everyone in the field who's doing really excellent work. So I think we feel comfortable with the current membership, but I'm also happy to do some.
Well, I just think she may, yeah, if this group is even still active, if she's still active as its lead, it may enhance
Mhm.
the information sharing. That's it. Full-time employee working on behalf of the state, same issue. Why not?
Mhm.
That's really my question.
Okay. I'm more than happy to connect with some of my colleagues who are on the council, and get back to you all on that.
Fair enough.
Sorry, I don't have more information to share with you right now.
Yep, and you can, what are you gonna say?
I was gonna say to Senator Weeks' point, we should probably just ask agency of ed and this Dee's office if they want to be part of this and if they can contribute to it. I know sometimes the things that you look at first glance might seem like it makes sense to put them in whatever you're doing, but
Oh, I get that. I'm not trying to force you. I'm trying to ask a question. If she's been inadvertently omitted.
So we'll assume that the Agency of Education is watching, and get their response, and then Charlie, you'll check in with your numbers and you could just send us an email
Okay, perfect.
and that'll help us. So. We didn't know the list, right? Did we? Yes, okay, but I've got one too.
the home study thing, is that?
Oh, yeah, thank you. But we hadn't finished yet.
I thought that was going on with chronic absenteeism.
Oh,
Yeah,
Right.
that's right.
I
Okay,
keep mixing up.
I got confused about
I
that.
forgot.
where are we now?
We're in this lane.
Like,
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk about the
We're gonna-
other thing.
yeah.
I am getting confused too. It's hard for me.
I do not have a new draft for you today of,
Well, we didn't finish the walkthrough, did we? I mean,
of chronic absenteeism.
Yeah, did we go all the way through?
No, I mean, I think we
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 got,
got through two definitions with me
Yeah.
and then you had the agency.
Yeah. So, and just so people know this, we got the email today from Eric Lafayette about the, actually from Patty, but about a bit of a, about the energy. Forget the terminology. What is it?
Performance contract.
Yeah, performance contractor. And John just suggested, we can raise a little bit of a, want to make sure we know exactly what it means to do it. So we're gonna get John in on Tuesday and along with Eric and just make sure that I think it's actually, it may turn out to be as simple as we thought it would, but we ought to take a little more testing just to make sure we know exactly what we're doing. So we'll do that on Tuesday. John, Daphne's trying to line that up. So I think we left off on chronic absenteeism on page 6, maybe.
One other recommendation, if I could.
Yep.
Can we like be a little more directive towards AOE and ask Torin to ask if D Barb is still active?
Yep.
As opposed to, relying on them, somebody picking up on it.
Yes. We can.
That's done.
So are we switching
You're
gears?
switching
to
gears.
page 930?
Yes,
Okay.
switching gears. So by the way, so I assume we were all. We have that one outstanding issue about the, otherwise. People good with the amendment?
Yes.
Okay. Down to just that one issue with the assuming it's good. Yes,
I know that I've discussed the hazing harassment and bullying advisory council, and I don't know if the committee is interested in adding that language into either the miscellaneous ed bill or the chronic absenteeism bill, but I just wanted to note that for the committee's consideration.
why don't we, since we're going to not be voting this today, why don't you add that into the next draft?
Yes, if I can connect with Charlie to make sure I understand what the right approach is, because I don't think I was here for that.
Okay. Okay,
I'll send you something with that.
okay. Okay, getting warmer on that one. So we're gonna now switch to the chronic absent, back to the chronic absenteeism.
Okay.
Then I right left off on page 6.
I don't think we got past page 1 with me.
Oh, okay.
When I was in the chair doing the markup, there was quite a bit of discussion about the definitions. And I don't think for true markup line by line, like you had wanted to do, I don't think we had gotten past the section 1120. But yesterday, when you had the subject matter experts from the field in, you touched the whole bill. So I think it's just a matter of how confident you are in the changes that you talked about yesterday, and I took notes on all of those, and whether you wanted to kind of go back and comb through everything
Well,
with me.
not the parts that you've taken notes on.
Okay,
Because we'll see that when we get a draft, when we do fly through the draft, so. The parts where you,
I have no, this is,
okay, so my
how can I be best
Yeah,
helpful?
okay. My recollection is that we. Got through page 6. With at least enough for the next draft. We're picking up on line 16 on page 6.
So I think that is where you left, that is the the red marks I made from yesterday, watching from the sidelines, that's where you finished
Okay.
with your witnesses from yesterday.
Yeah.
And so if you'd like to pick up there, that's great.
Yeah, let's.
Great. I just, if you're talking about, I don't think you went over everything in the bill with your witnesses yesterday. I think AOE was commenting on VSBA's memo, right? And so they didn't touch everything in the bill. And so it's really a matter of where you want to spend your time.
Why don't we start there, recognizing that when we look at the next draft, we'll have to be looking carefully at some sections we might not have done, some we might not have touched in the first
Okay.
5.5 pages.
Okay.
As we get rescan.
Okay.
Unless Beth, you can remember sections that we didn't even talk about.
I would have to look at the SBA's memo.
Yep.
To tell you whether or not they had comments on it.
You know, you're actually, I take back what I said. Let's start at the bottom of page 2. I think we've kind of done what we can do with the first, most of the first and second page for the moment.
They were good explanations. It's helpful to understand why truancy versus absenteeism is even a highlight of the bill. It's a little convoluted, but it's fun.
So, attendance by children of school age. What?
Yes, this is your compulsory attendance statute. And so you've got a term change here. We've now defined parent or guardian, and we're no longer using the term a person having the control of attendance. Some drafting conventions on lines 20 and 21, just in how we reference ages. Moving on to page 3. Line 4 adds the qualifier per medical recommendation for mental or physical inability to attend school. So these are the reasons, these are not excused or unexcused absences. These are the reasons a child who is between the ages of 6 and 16 doesn't need to be in school.
Yeah.
Completed 10th grade is excused by the superintendent or designee or the head of school for an approved independent school or designee, or is enrolled in college. So really no substantive changes there, other than I would posit per medical recommendation is substantive change regarding mentally or physically unable.
So are we comfortable marking off 1121? Starting with line 19 on page 2 and going through line 12 on page 3 of marking that off as okay.
Is this the laundry list? Or?
No,
Oh, no.
no, these are the reasons
Yeah.
child does not have to be in school, period.
Oh, I see. On page 2, starting 1121
Line 19.
Line 19 on page 2.
through
That's
page 3, line 12.
Yes,
These are the kind of existing
Yeah.
list.
just made, as Beth noted, clarified a little bit. But no substantive change, just clarified it.
This is as passed by the House. I'm just trying to reflect on the testimony we got and how it is congruent throughout. And I think Representative Chapin was essentially saying medical recommendations are slow and they're hard to afford.
That's a different section she was talking.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, this section, section 1121,
Uh-huh.
this is the list of reasons the compulsory attendance law would not apply to someone.
Right, well, it says per medical recommendation.
Right, because they are mentally or physically unable to attend school. That's different than being able to attend school and then being absent from school, which is, I believe, what Rep. Chapin was referring to.
Yeah, these are-
Interesting.
These are kids who simply can't.
Oh, okay. Getting it
It's,
now.
yeah, it's not, has nothing to do with.
Just will not be.
Right.
Got it.
Is there a typo or did I forget how to read where it's line 4, unable so to attend, or should it be unable to attend?
I think it's just antiquated language that
So.
So to attend. Able, so you
happy to strike so.
Let's do that.
a contribution.
Yeah, there we go.
See the chapter you're walking.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to line 13 on page 3, section 1122. This is also an amendment to a current law statute. And this statute is essentially saying that if you are outside the window of the compulsory attendance requirements, so if you are under 6 or over 16, and you actually enroll in school, you gotta go. So the compulsory attendance requirements would apply to you. And so the changes here, we've got some, we're no longer on line 14 using that person having control, we're using the parent or guardian. This language was just for students over 16. And now there is a substantive change in adding under 6 as well. So on either side of the compulsory attendance requirement.
So this might adhere to somebody whose child would be at the very youngest age of starting whatever the grade is besides the without bringing or thinking to that without being in. That's the only stage.
Right, so you have to, Vermont has a compulsory attendance requirement starting at age 6, so not a grade, an age, right? And so if you are 5 and enrolled in kindergarten, the compulsory attendance laws will apply to you. But if your parents decide not to roll you in kindergarten until you're 6, then the compulsory attendance laws wouldn't apply to you. It's the same with an over 16. If you stay in school, then the compulsory attendance requirements are going to apply to you. And if you leave school after 16, this current law says that's okay. Or that is legal, I should say.
And if you never register your child, the state's never knows.
I don't know the answer to that question. I think that would be a question for the agency.
Are we, this looks like it's relatively speaking. Cleaning up language.
Yes.
Clarify. Are we good to go with that? One more, two?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I'm on page 4 now, line 5, section 1123. This is the section I think you had a lot of discussion about yesterday. The excused absence list.
We know, so, yes.
And so my understanding is that the vision you have for the next draft will be, we're gonna keep the lead-in language for subsection A. So the superintendent or head of school may excuse a student's absence for all or part of the school day. And then I will add some language that says something to the effect of in accordance with the model policy requirements, model policy definitions within the model policy, something like that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I would strike the list. We're gonna get rid of the list.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I ask one question? Just to clarify, for some of the applicants in the room. So here on page 4, line 6, we highlight the superintendent basically adjudicating absenteeism. I'm wondering if this effort to transform Vermont education and superintendents they have larger geographic footprints, more schools, maybe on multiple factor higher than they are now. Is this totally responsibility for the superintendent or both of them?
I'm happy that Sue Siglowski, Vermont School Boards Association. I think you have it covered in the language here because it says the superintendent or designee.
Okay.
So
I just wonder who's really doing it now? Is it all the superintendents? Oh, they're charter.
I think they are currently.
Okay.
Yes.
That's great. Just curious. Thank you.
So that takes us down to the on page
5, yep, line 9. And I wrote next to this subsection yesterday, keep. Does that sound right to you?
yes, right? But, so I think that we decided that was okay.
This does, so subsection A was the list, and subsection B is saying the superintendent or head of school may also excuse the student for pre-planned family commitments or activities of which the school has been notified in advance. Pre-approved absences shall not exceed 10 cumulative school days in each school year. I think you can keep that, and then the model policy will have to comply with this, or you can also take this piece and have it reflected, like all excused absences would be reflected in the model policy. I think that is a policy choice, and I am not the one who has to write the model policy or execute it. But I just wanted to point out that subsection B is also a reason for an excused absence. And just for consistency's sake, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to confirm that that is what you wanted.
So that's interesting, because what you're kind of saying is that it's almost just another one on the list with a different.
That's one way to read it. Although this does have a separate tie-in on lines 14 and 15, right? Pre-approved absences shall not exceed 10 cumulative school days each school year.
What do people like?
I'm okay shifting it to the model policy, but I don't want to create a gap between now or when the model policy is finished, that it's Wild Wild West. And
I mean, my understanding is schools are already having to do this, right? This is all, you're making changes to a chapter of current law. And so right now, current law says superintendent, let's see.
well, I see the part that's struck out.
Yep. So if we go all the way back to page 4, the superintendent may excuse in writing any student from attending the school for a definite time, but for not more than 10 consecutive school days and only for emergencies or for absence from town. So that's current, that's what we have to work with now. And then that language on page 5, for elementary school, may excuse in writing a student from attending more than 175 days, which is not really reflective in the new language. So folks are already having to grapple with this without small policy.
So I think the consensus is that we're actually going to, I had written okay, but I think we're doing the opposite. We're going to leave or move this into a model policy. And then C
Is just it's a may, so the superintendent or head of school may require justification for an absence. Dr. Snow. Proof of your driving test, whatever that is. It's a may, not a shall.
I'm a shell. I don't know why this wouldn't be standard practice.
Do you really do that? I mean, sometimes it's a verbal, like it goes in and says.
Oh, it doesn't mean it's written. If you just says request for justification, nothing written, nothing. No. It's a look him in the eye, ask for justification. We're trying to. I don't know. It's just my gut feeling. If we're trying to, we really do have a chronic absenteeism problem. The may seems a little fluffy, and we're in a scenario where we need a little more direct. That's just my gut feeling. I come from a different background.
So I think what this was intended to do was just make clear that the superintendent was, he has the authority to.
That's fair. Anyway, that's just my feeling. The overall, I've been dying to hell.
Violate. Well, be careful not being restrictive.
Is that gonna be in the model policy?
Yeah.
So you don't have a model policy. Okay.
You can certainly add language that the model policy section is gonna look very different when it comes back, and so you could certainly add a line in there that says model policy balance with guidance.
Yep.
On when superintendents may need to request notification for an absence.
So, we're actually gonna shift gears to, Julia and
Oh, okay.
Ezra for a little while and then pick back up on this. So, pick up on page 5. 24.
We're good to the bottom of 4 now.
We're, well, till we get to line, line 17.
That's of 5.
Yes, on page 5. So,
And I guess I was, did we decide 5 is deleted on page 5? Did we decide to delete that after yesterday's conversation, or is that stay?
5.
Incidents of hazing, harassment. What did we decide?
Oh, that's gonna be part of the law policy.
Okay,
So
so-
the list will not be there. Okay. So Julian is. Or is, how are you gonna do it?
I'll just sit to the side.
Both do, yeah, do it however you wanna do it.
Now this was 9:55, we're on in there.
Well, we're going to the.
Yeah.
This one. Oops. And Ezra, you will have to remind it, we'll cut off.
Sure, for director, that's your Holden, going fiscal office. It looks like you all have copies of the fiscal notes, so I won't put it up on the screen. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. So we were on section 2. If you recall, we had skipped ahead to the school construction sections with Julia, and then we were going to go back to the first few sections, which I worked on. So.
That's right, we just really got started. That's what happened. That's right. Yeah.
All right, so starting with section 2, which big picture, that would amend statute to replace boards of cooperative education services, or BOCES, with your new term, the cooperative educational service areas, or CSAs. And so essentially a CSAW would be a group of supervisory unions, and the intent language is to provide members with shared programs and services. The section would create 7 CSAs in statute, and it would name the member SUs. And so the SUs would be mandated to join the CSA, but the using the services of the CSA would still be voluntary by the supervisory union. Initially, the CSA staff would just include the executive director, who reports to the board of the CSA. But one of the reasons that we flag that the total fiscal impact of this section is unclear is we don't know how many staff members in total a CSA will employ. It depends on the number of services or programs that they offer, how they structure those services and programs, and what sort of staff they may or may not need to hire for that. And so it's unclear how money saved, if that will save money, and how much will we save versus the cost of onboarding any new resources or personnel to accomplish those programs. So that's why we have an unclear fiscal impact for that section.
Yes.
This is actually a question probably for, now, when, has the SUs put in thoughts on it says, because it's optional for an SU they have to be part of it, but they're not. I got to be as part of it, but you don't have to use any of the services. Has there been communication between all of you to say this is a good thing? We're probably going to take advantage of it, or it hasn't even been discussed?
For record, Mark Koenig, Vermont School Board Association, really not discussed. The idea is that you would, once this is obtained, you might say, we do need this. If there's not anything that you need from the cafeteria menu that you might have possible services, then we're good on this. But the idea, the hope is that as it goes forward, it's like, oh, we don't need to hire our own person to do this. We could use this contract.
Thank you.
Or if we can't find a person, we could use this contract.
Thank you.
All right, so that's section 2. Gonna skip ahead to section 4, which is the CISA Startup Grant Program. So, and this one would be effective, sorry, both of them are effective July 1st, 2026. So section 2 and section 4. Section 4 would amend Act 168's BOCES grant program so that the CISAs, which are effectively replacing BOCES, would be eligible to receive these startup grants. So each CISA could receive a grant from the Agency of Education equal to $15,000. And this could help offset some of the CISA's initial startup costs. So initially, fiscal year 2025, about $60,000 was, no, I'm sorry, $70,000 in fiscal year 2025 was appropriated to the Agency of Education from the Education Fund for these startup grants when they were for BOCES. So now this is amending it to CISAs and 60,000 remains. In addition, this section would amend the budget so that 30,000 from the general fund would be put towards this. So it's essentially, it would be telling the Agency of Education to use $30,000 of their ed transformation dollars to help issue these grants. That's how you get 15,000 per season.
Do we have any data on the one BOCE that did stand up with their startup costs or what we gave them and what they utilized?
So all I can add, I think that'd be a great question for the CISA themselves. They did apply for this grant, which is why there are now $60,000 left rather than the initial 70,000.
We have that.
So yeah, so that's all I
will
want.
figure out.
So that's all I'm able to say tonight.
So if everybody done it. Much fun.
So
Yeah, so that's section 4. So all of that would be available in fiscal year 2027 for these state CISAs. So that's a total of 90,000, 60 plus the new 30. So I think I'll skip ahead to section 13 here. So this is the Union School District Study Committee section. So this would set out the process for establishing study committees to explore forming unified union school districts. I'll just say union district for the rest of this section to try and shorten it up a little bit. So this process would start October 1st, 2026 and would run through November 7th of 2028, following all steps of it. So essentially, beginning October of 2026, the Vermont, the Vermont Learning Collaborative, is that the acronym? VTLC, Vermont Learning Collaborative, would be required. And sorry, let me back up. VTLC is your one current CISA. They started out as a BOCES and they are now a CISA. So they're currently in existence. So they would be required to hire 8 individuals to serve as union district facilitators. So they would be charged with organizing the school districts into study committees to explore forming these union districts.
For the CISAs.
No, I'm
Our
sorry.
businesses.
So the CISAs, the membership of the CISAs are set out already in this. The Union District Study Committee is a facilitator selecting a group of school districts and putting them in a separate committee to study forming a union district. So
So this is totally separate.
Not, no, not exactly.
so the CISAs are a shared
Yes, this is,
shared services.
yes.
The union district would be districts talking about forming a brand new union district. So this is just a committee to facilitate current law districts talking amongst themselves if they want to form a union district, if some of them want to, if no one wants to. This is separate from the CISA, so they,
This is union districts.
yes.
Yep, got it. Okay.
Right funding, allocate to that.
Yeah, so we will have some funding, that comes a little later on. So I can flag that for you when we get there. So yeah, so they're going to be doing, the facilitators are going to be doing that work and putting together the member districts. There is some guidance contained in the bill, for the membership of each of those districts. So there would be 21 study committee, union district study committees. Essentially, each committee would have, from December 1st, 2026 to December 1st of 2027 to complete a report outlining whether or not they found it advisable to form a union district. So they have about a year to formally do that work with the facilitator. So moving ahead to February 1st of 2027, the Agency of Education with these 8 individuals that facilitated input would submit a report to the House committees on education, ways and means, and then the Senate Committee on Education and Finance. And this report would detail the current membership and status of the study committee. So that's letting the General Assembly know how the work is progressing. And so overall, the total fiscal impact of this is unclear because it's leaving it up to these committees to decide if they would or would not like to form a union district. So we aren't able to tell you the costs because we don't know what they're going to decide.
So what authority do they have? They can do this right now. Is this in law already?
So I'll have to turn to the Ledge Council about authority and law.
Beth St. James, Office of Legislative Counsel. Yes, these school districts are being asked to follow current law as amended by the bill. Current law does not require anyone to get together. But the process, once folks do get together to just have formation of a union school district, is current law.
All right, so I'll move on now to section 17, and this talks about the funding that's available for this that Senator Williams was asking about. So section 17, which would be effective on July 1, 2026, this would create grants to be administered by the Agency of Education to assist the study committees. So essentially, each of those study committees would be eligible for up to $10,000 in reimbursement grants that the Agency of Education would issue. So that's a total of $210,000 the 21 different committees. And so this funding would come from a general fund appropriation that has been given to the Agency of Education for transformation work. The budget, this bill would amend the budget to direct the agency to use those funds for these grants. So this is money appropriated fiscal year 26. Yeah, so the 2027 budget would direct the Agency of Education to use these funds that they were appropriated in fiscal year 2026 for these grants. Yeah, so this is, yeah, well, that's all I'll say on it. I believe it's a reimbursement, so the committee will do work and be reimbursed. I believe 1/2 up front, and then the second half after they've submitted their final report up to that $10,000. So this section 17 also includes
So Beth, the final report, what is that? Does that simply say either we decided it does not make sense for us to merge? Or does it say we're gonna continue to work on it?
Which final report?
Well, each study committee will be able to go for the,
What page are you on?
well, I guess on page 4 of the,
Oh, you're on the fiscal bill?
just on the fiscal
What section of the bill?
section
section,
17,
section 7.
the report that the study committees need to report on to get the remainder of their reimbursement.
Oh,
I'm wondering how far in the process they're supposed to be by the time they issue a report.
so they're done. The study committee's work is done. They have either decided they're not going to recommend forming a study committee and their report is their final
Yeah.
act.
Yeah.
Or, I'm sorry, recommend forming a union school district, or they are recommending forming a union school district and the study committee's work is done and in that they have to issue their report with their proposed articles of agreement, but then they have to follow the report to the agency and to the state board. And then there would be a vote on whether or not to form the union school district, but the report would be coming out before those final steps.
So the report would simply say, yes, it makes sense, I'm gonna pursue.
H 950 current law requires certain things to be in the report and 955 requires more things to be in the report. And if the recommendation is that it is advisable to form a union school district, they also need to have proposed articles of agreement.
That, we're just going through this, I understand, so I'm not getting into this, but that sounds like a lot more than $10,000 to get to.
They are getting a facilitator as well. The facilitators pay for separately.
Fair enough, yeah, okay. Yep.
And the language is specific that if you need more than the facilitator and the 10 grand, then you can revert to current law, which is coming out of your own school district budget.
Okay.
But yeah, ultimately how much you give these study committees to be a policy.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so moving on to those facilitators that Beth just referenced. So H 955 would also direct the Agency of Education to issue a grant to the VTLC to hire those facilitators. So the grant would be equal to $442,000 to hire those 8 individuals. And also 32,000 of that could be retained by VTLC to cover their administrative costs of managing these 8 facilitators and whatever else would be entailed with that.
What is the mechanism? I mean, do the districts know that they have to do it? That they have the option to do it?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Well, I'm saying
The option
that-
to do one.
We're telling them that they're gonna be doing study committees, that they have a certain time, a certain amount of money to do it. They already know that.
I can't answer that question.
Is your question, are they obligated to do it, or is it
No, what-
voluntary?
How are we making sure that they know what they're doing? If they decide to.
The same way that there's nothing specifically in here about publicizing. So it's the same assumption that we're making about every law you pass. And that is folks are paying attention and are going to follow the laws. Right? So there's all kinds of different folks watching your work and the bills that are coming out of this body who will be working with their different trade organizations.
And their superintendents, they'll be talking to each other.
And VTLC is required to hire those facilitators who are then required to put folks on study committees. So someone's gonna come knocking at some point.
Thank you.
All right, and then finally, the last bit here of section 17 would also create CISA executive director grants. So these grants would each be equal to $50,000 and would be awarded by the Agency of Education to 6 of the CISAs within this bill. BTLC would not be eligible because they have already been formed prior to this act. So this would be $300,000 in total grants. And this would again be using funds previously appropriated through Act 73 to the Agency of Education. And you are amending through the budget of in section C103, you are amending how that money shall be used by the agency. So the total impact of this section would be a net neutral shift of $952,000 general fund appropriated in fiscal year 2026. So by directing the agency to use those funds for these purposes.
Again, just for clarity, because topics swirling around. BTLC is a current BOCES, correct?
Yes.
BTLC was created for a subset of districts to bond together for business purposes. What if they want to grow like their footprint? I guess what I'm asking is, are they represented on the map now for the 7 BOCES as a unique and established BOCES? CISA?
Yes, so VTLC is included in this bill and their members are included.
Can they expand? Do they have a mechanism to expand?
I don't know.
Or is it kind of set that the,
So
The H 955 is passed by the House, sets DSA membership in statute and very specifically set the membership for VTLC as its current membership.
as it's currently?
Correct.
Anybody, just curious, does anybody have a map of the 7? Andy, just,
It should be on your webpage.
I'm sure it is. Nope, okay. I don't, I just want to clarify that BTLC was a BOCES. It's current BOCES, but it simply recognizes the current boundaries of that one BOCES. Thanks.
all right, so that's section 17. So section 18 would amend effective dates and contingencies for some of Act 73's sections. I believe that there is a timeline in the back, in the appendices, that would probably be, yeah, so that would be the best place to direct you all to read through all the different sections and how their effective date are being changed, if they're being changed. So just flagging for you to check that. Section 21 would mandate several reports on pre-K education. And so that would involve the Agency of Education, DCF, Building Bright Futures. So just to touch on that, there's nothing specific that the committee's interested in. I'll just flag that within section 21, this section would appropriate $75,000 from the general fund to JFO in fiscal year 2027 to hire a contractor to provide a cost of care analysis for pre-K.
So the JFO section has $75,000 attached in it.
And if you turn to the table towards the beginning of the fiscal note, you will see that 75,000 is kind of on its own as the single new appropriation. The rest of the dollars in that table are current appropriations that are being redirected to this work. So you'll see that on the table here in this fiscal note.
Beth, what is a cost of care analysis or something? Like what's the cost of care part? Terminology mean?
I'm not sure that I am the best person to answer that question. Is that a JFO?
Is that a JFO question?
If we're gonna go deep in, Julie Briggs for JFO, I think if we're gonna go deep into this analysis and this contract, I'd like to bring in our colleague Ted Barnett, who works most closely on pre-K, and he could talk through what exactly a cost of care analysis would
Okay,
entail.
we'll worry about it later on. Just curious about what the terminology, okay.
It is a term of art within the pre-K space, and I'm just not prepared to talk about it.
Okay, well, fair enough.
All right, so section 22, effective July 1st, this would require each student who's receiving tuition for their public education to complete forms used to collect information on all weighting categories. So essentially, this is just data collection. Flagging this just because while we can't estimate the fiscal impact of this section, it may or may not result in additional student weighting data being brought in, which in the case of the foundation formula, that would be an increase in your education payment, the EOP. In the current law, that would not be a new cost, but that would be shifting taxing capacity. If you increase the number of weighted students at one district, that would just shift the tax burden across the state. Just flagging that. That's a known unknown. So skipping ahead to section 24, just flagging that it's effective July 1st, 2030, and it's also contingently effective, but this would prohibit any school from that receives tuition from charging any other tuition or fees from a tuition student. So again, fiscal impact of this section is unclear. And if a receiving school or school district decides to increase its tuition because they can't charge any fees or additional side tuitions, like this could result in an increase in your overall education spending if they need to increase the tuition in absence of charging a new fee.
This should recall, we got one email about this section. They took some zero estimating. Okay. Section 25.
All right, so this would increase effective July 1st, 2026. This would increase the threshold of a union district study committee's budget before your voter approval is needed. So under current law, if a committee budget exceeds $50,000, it must be approved by the member district's voters. This will now change that threshold to $500,000.
Study committee.
Yeah.
In districts.
Yeah, so the fiscal impact of this is unclear, but essentially if a study committee is like one of the study committee studying this union district, because of this sets its budget at 100,000 rather than 50,000, this doesn't trigger a vote by their member districts. But under current law, anything above 50,000 would trigger a vote by the member district's voters. So just flagging.
Yeah, so remember that we had that testimony from Jackie Wilson and a couple of other people about the fact that the real work is done before the vote. And this bill has, well, in addition to the facilitator has $10,000 bills for that. So this is if you spend more than that, deciding you want to forward.
So
Yeah,
is the trigger specific to the study committee for the union district?
I think
The
so.
$500,000.
I'm sorry, what section are you on?
Like 25.
This is, section 25, I'm sorry, did you want me to, I just started taking control as is. A lot of these questions are best directed to what council. Ezra, are you cool with the answer? Okay. Section 25 is amending section 707, which is the study committee budget. Current law requires a study committee to get approval of the electorate if they are going to spend more than $50,000 to fund the study committee. And all section 25 does is raise that threshold at which they need to seek voter approval from 50,000 to 500,000. No one gets any money from this section. It's not an appropriation or a grant. It's just the setting the threshold at which a union school district study committee would need to seek and get voter approval for a budget.
Thank you.
So section 26 your small and sparse school rulemaking. That would require the State Board of Education to update its education quality standards to define the criteria for schools to be considered small or sparse by necessity. And I flagged this because I'm sure you all will remember whenever I come in here and talk to the committee about the foundation formula, I always had a little asterisk saying undefined or we use this proxy. So small by necessity and sparse by necessity are used for your school support grants under Act 73's foundation formula. As that hasn't been defined, whenever we do our modeling, we have to use a proxy. And it won't be the same thing as whatever the final rule is, which will result in analysis needs to be updated. So this is the flag that this is where that rulemaking comes into play. Now, we've been alluding to the last, I guess, 2 sessions, whenever I come in here saying, here's this asterisk, we don't know. So that's the flag for this. And so the rulemaking would be due back, it looks like by March 31st, 2027. So fiscal impact is unknown because we don't know what that ruling will be. And then sections 28 and 29, I'll just get down to those. That is still talking about the small schools and sparse schools, but essentially this would repeal the language in Act 73 for your small and sparse schools. And then this section would reintroduce that with some changes, and the reason that's done would best be explained by Ledge Council, because I think that's a legal, not a fiscal impact. But again, we can't estimate the fiscal impact of these sections because we still need the State Board of Education to do that rulemaking. And then the Agency of Education will actually be implementing. We don't know how that would be. So just flagging that for you all. And I think that brings us up to the sections essentially where we step into the tax territory. And if there are any sections I skipped over that the committee would have to go back to, let me know. Otherwise, that's what I have.
I just want to make a note of this on your summary, which I appreciate. Where is the tax? Which section is the first tax section?
So I have section 30,
30.
30 through 57 is your regional assessment districts. So that's where my tax line is.
Any budget for this report? Yeah. Why don't we take a short break? Bill 240. It's the 5-minute break. Then we'll go pick back up where we left off.